welcome back to Removing the Veil podcast, where we remove the veil of religion and open your eyes to the truth of the gospel of Jesus Christ. My name is Liz, and I'm here with my husband, Zac.
Hello, everyone.
And today we are going to be talking about depressive disorders. So what made you want to talk about seasonal depression?
Well, I think it's relevant as we head into the winter months, where people have depression that is due to the weather patterns, the sun not being around as much, maybe stuck inside, and in some places cut off from different supports, whether that be social, spiritual, maybe they're iced in and can't make it to church. And so talking about the reality of the fact that some of us, even though we're Christians, are still going to struggle with depression and still going to struggle with times where we're down. And depression is something that affects millions of individuals all over the world. The DSM-5 lists that around 7% of the U.S. population has 12-month prevalence of major depressive disorder, and there is a higher rate in women than men. And if we think about the fact that the U.S. has roughly 340 million people, 7% prevalence would give us somewhere right around 24 million people each year that suffer from major depressive disorder. And within major depressive disorder, there is the with seasonal pattern, which is known as seasonal affective disorder, where depression is linked to seasons, specifically more autumn and winter when there's less sun. And so the DSM-5 actually lays out exactly the criteria for with seasonal pattern. And it says that this specifier applies to recurrent major depressive disorder. A, there has been a regular temporal relationship between the onset of major depressive episodes in major depressive disorder and a particular time of the year. Note, do not include cases in which there is an obvious effect of seasonally related psychological stressors, such as being unemployed every winter. B, full remissions also occur at a characteristic time of the year. For example, depression disappears in the spring. C, in the last 2 years, 2 major depressive episodes have occurred that demonstrate the temporal, seasonal relationships defined above, and no non-seasonal major depressive episodes have occurred during that same period. D, seasonal major depressive episodes, as described above, substantially outnumber the non-seasonal major depressive episodes that may have occurred over the individual's lifetime. Note, the specifier with seasonal pattern can apply to the pattern of major depressive episodes in major depressive disorder recurrent. The essential feature is that the onset and remission of major depressive episodes at characteristic times of the year. In most cases, the episodes begin in fall or winter and remit in the spring. Less commonly, there may be recurrent summer depressive episodes. This pattern of onset and remission of episodes must have occurred during at least a 2-year period without any non-seasonal episodes occurring during this period. In addition, the seasonal depressive episodes must substantially outnumber any non-seasonal depressive episodes over the individual's lifetime. This specifier does not apply to those situations in which the pattern is better explained by seasonally linked psychological stressors, seasonal unemployment or school schedule. Major depressive episodes that occur in seasonal pattern are often characterized by loss of energy, hypersomnia, overeating, weight gain, and a craving for carbohydrates. The prevalence of winter-type seasonal pattern appears to vary with latitude, age, and sex. Prevalence increases with higher latitudes. Age is also a strong predictor in seasonality, with younger persons at higher risk for winter depressive episodes. And then it goes into specification of if it is in full or partial remission, and then the severity of the seasonal affective disorder. So, seasonal affective disorder, or SAD, usually begins in autumn and continues into winter as the amount of light from the sun diminishes. Both serotonin and melatonin play a role in SAD. Typically, it is the underproduction of serotonin and overproduction of melatonin that we see in SAD. And anyone that's studied any sort of depression, anxiety, anything like that, will realize that serotonin is almost always a major role player in those disorders. There's some abnormality in the production of serotonin that directly impacts a lot of mental health dysfunction, especially when we're talking about depressive disorders, anxiety disorders, things like that. But it continues throughout a lot of different dysfunctional disorders. Reduced sunlight can also lead to individuals being deficient in vitamin D, which there's been a lot of research on the interaction with vitamin D and being vitamin D deficient. And so it's theorized at this point that vitamin D plays kind of a key role in our moods. And so there's been a lot of research that has gone into that, and it seems to show that there is a link between the amount of vitamin D in our bodies and how positive our moods are. The treatment for seasonal affective disorder includes medication, light therapy, supplementation, and counseling. Medication utilizes SSRIs, or selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, to regulate levels of serotonin. SSRIs are used with a lot of depression, anxiety, antipsychotic medication, as serotonin plays such a large role in all of those. Whereas light therapy seeks to replace lost sunlight with artificial light and requires exposure for around an hour every morning to combat the lost sunlight. Supplementation focuses on vitamin D being lower in the body due to the lack of sunlight. And then counseling works by helping individuals suffering from seasonal affective disorder change the way they think about the challenges they are facing. Of course, all of these therapies and treatment plans are something that would be worked through with a professional. There's negative aspects to medication, light therapy. So depression is something that, for me, that's kind of interesting, because the VA has diagnosed me with depression because I meet a lot of the criteria. One of the things, though, that is strange to me is that I have hope always, no matter how down I'm feeling.
Yeah.
Or how bleak things look. I'm never without hope, and that was always something I kind of used as a criteria for having depression, as being hopeless. Obviously, you tell your doctor at the VA, well, I understand, I have all these things that line up with depression, but I have a hope inside me that can't be extinguished, because the source of my hope is not in myself, it's in Jesus Christ. And so I'm never in despair, believing that there's no point, or that everything is bereft of hope.
Isn't that kind of what, some of the conversations you had whenever you were in the military? with certain people. They'd be like, why are you not freaking out? Or
Yeah.
I don't know how they put it exactly.
Well, one of the more interesting ones is during the Afghanistan withdrawal and doing security for those refugees that were coming through. One of the people that I was a supervisor for asked why it was that I had a smile and that I could stay like upbeat, seeing the same things that they saw and being exposed to kind of that same environment that they were being exposed to. Is how could I keep going and keep what seemed like a chipper attitude about it. And I mean, I told him that basically what I had was a relationship with Christ, and that I could recognize all of the things that he was recognizing, and I could take in all of that in much the same way he was, but I had Christ pouring into me, so I was never empty.
Yeah. So people who are walking in the world, when they're dealing with depression, a lot of the times they don't know how to deal with it. Most of the time, I would say they deal with it with probably like alcohol and drugs and things like that. I don't know. And then, if they're more like a put together person, they might, go to the
Seek
doctor.
treatment, yeah.
And then the doctor is going to put you on these medications that are going to then affect the way that your body and your brain interact. And a lot of people don't really feel like themselves on this medication.
Yeah.
And you and I would agree that depression is not just spiritual or just clinical. It can be both.
Right.
Like when you're struggling with something like that, it can be something that, where maybe it is more spiritual or it's more clinical, and it does need to be diagnosed and treated with medicine. And me, as a newly saved person, I did have a little bit of conflict with that because I had depression pretty much my entire life. It runs in my family, if that's a thing where it runs. I don't even know if it runs in the family kind of thing, but a lot of people in my family...
There is some evidence that depression can be genetic.
Well, a lot of people in my family struggle with depression and like bipolar disorder and different sort of disorders. And I had depression pretty much my entire life. I had postpartum depression with some of the kids. But I just remember whenever I was saved, one of the things that God did for me was he took away my depression.
Right.
And I don't know why he did that, but I know when he did that, I thought, oh, well, look, you can just turn to God and he will take away your depression and you're going to, just be like me. And I remember sharing that with people in my family, and they were very offended. And, because I don't know, it wasn't like, it was almost like they couldn't accept it. And at the time I thought, well, this sucks, because I thought I had like a simple solution for the problem.
Right.
And while I'll say that like God can heal anything, he can heal your depression, your anxiety, and all of that, he doesn't always do that.
Right.
Sort of like, Paul's thorn in the flesh kind of thing. Like there are some things where God says that his grace is sufficient.
Right. It almost creates, so you're like, oh, well, just be like me, and God can heal your depression, because absolutely we believe that he can, but it creates kind of a wrong image to follow, like, because both of us would say we don't want anyone to be like us. We want them to be like Christ. And it's very akin to a lot of your prosperity gospel and faith healer
health
people.
and wealth
Yeah,
gospel.
because they'll be like, oh, well, if it didn't happen, it's because you don't have enough faith. So, something like that could easily be twisted to be like, oh, well, you don't have as much faith as Liz, and that's why your depression wasn't cured. When in reality, like, you can have more faith than you, and God may choose to say, you know what? No, my grace is sufficient, as you were saying. And I think that one of the things that you kind of touched on is that we both agree it's not an either or, but a both and. And so when it comes to like the spiritual aspect to depression, absolutely, I believe there is one. I believe that even Christians experiencing depression, it can be a spiritual attack, as well as being due to biological, genetic factors, environmental, right? There's huge environmental factors that play a role in major depressive disorder. And so those things can absolutely be both spiritual and physical, we'll say, to kind of categorize all of that together. But so too can treatment. You can have the treatment that is, the pharmacology, the psychotherapy, light therapy, supplementation, as well as being in the Word, drawing closer to God, and experiencing kind of a growing of your faith.
Right.
All right. And a new perspective on just how small a lot of things that we believe are so big actually are in the grand scheme of things.
Well, and as someone who's God, initially took away my depression, I'm not saying that I haven't been depressed since then, but it's definitely more of like it's definitely different. I don't know if what was taken off of me was more of like an oppressive, something that was oppressing me, but it definitely felt like a really heaviness that you basically can't get up. Like you can't get off, like you can't get it off of you. You can't get up and do anything. You're just in such a state of hopelessness. And like you said, Jesus is the one that gives us hope. But I still suffer and deal with things like anxiety. That kind of came later, but I realized also that some of that anxiety had to do with my health. And so it's important to like take care of yourself, make sure that you're eating well and exercising and, like you said, trying to get your own serotonin levels, from something, and your hormones, like all that kind of stuff. Like that's also a part of it.
Yeah. And your serotonin regulation may not be correct, and you may need to seek professional help.
Yeah.
If your depression is making it where like affecting your life and you cannot live your life functionally, right? That's kind of the main thing with psychology, is if it's creating a dysfunction, you may need to seek professional help. And it's not a negative thing to get help for yourself. All of us need help at some point.
Right.
And we should be honest with ourselves in asking for that help. And then a limiting factor on seeking help potentially is funds, because a lot of treatments are not cheap. Going and seeing a counselor for months, maybe even years, is certainly not cheap.
But everybody could use a counselor. Literally everybody could benefit from counseling.
Absolutely. Even if it's lay counseling, right? You may not be able to talk to someone that has a PhD in, specifically whatever you're dealing with. but especially if you're part of a local body, a lot of pastors engage in what's known as lay counseling, where that's not their field of study, but people come to pastors with a lot of different things. They've seen a lot, and their heart should be a desire to serve and help the people of their flock, their fellow brothers and sisters in Christ. So if you have the opportunity to reach out and receive counseling from a pastor or an elder in your church, that's a wonderful thing, and it should be engaged in if you're having any sort of issue that counseling can help with.
Yeah, it's hard to talk about because it's kind of like all over the place. It's like, oh, you should do this if you know, you should go see a doctor, and or maybe it's spiritual, or maybe it's this, or maybe. But that's the thing, is like, it's so attuned to your individual self.
Right.
Like, it is hard to pinpoint what exactly could be causing your depression.
Yeah.
You know, but I know things that help me as far as like when we're talking about specifically seasonal depression, because I do have seasonal depression.
Mm-hmm.
Not living in the state of Washington helps. I'll say that. But getting out at night before the sun goes down, if you can just get out and just, even if the sun's not like out, if it's cloudy or rainy, it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. As long as I go outside at least once a day in the evening before it gets dark, and just go for like a walk or just be outside for a little bit, it helps. And I do it every day. Like I said, it doesn't matter if it's raining. Today it was snowing. Like, I don't care. Yeah. It's just something about being outside. It really helps to like calm me down, so I don't have a panic attack when I'm sitting, you know, and it's just so dark everywhere.
Right.
They also have like those, like when we lived in Washington, I had to get one of those lights.
Yeah, a light box.
Right, because it would just be gray for weeks and weeks. And so it's like this little light box that you can get like on Amazon or something, and it like actually puts like lumens like in your face that are kind of like sunlight.
Yeah, so
and that helps.
Usually,
also taking vitamin D supplements.
Yeah.
That also, I like, if I know it's going to be a cloudy day, I take my vitamin D, and it really helps.
Yeah, those light boxes specifically, they have pretty much the full spectrum minus ultraviolet light that kind of mimics sunlight. They're usually around 10,000 times the brightness of like indoor lights.
Yeah.
And honestly, some of your regions, like Norway, your Scandinavian countries where they experience a lot of darkness, like Alaska and stuff like that, they have light rooms, rooms that are built where they can sit there and be exposed to the light from all sides. You want to engage in that daily for the light therapy. But again, light therapy can potentially have negative side effects, and so it's something you would want to talk to a helping professional about and make sure that it's being monitored so that it doesn't negatively affect you or negatively interact with some of the medications, right? Light therapy negatively interacts with some different medications.
But other ways that, besides, your diet, exercise, trying to get as much vitamin D as you can during the winter months, making sure you're getting outside while it's sunny. Besides, like, those kind of things, there were people in the Bible who were depressed. Obviously, I think of you came up and were saying, King David.
Yeah.
And I thought that's a good one, but I was thinking like Job.
Yeah.
I mean, if anybody had a reason to be depressed, it would be him. As far as like circumstantial depression.
Right.
Like you said, there's different types of depression. Some of them are clinical, some of them are based on your circumstances.
Yeah.
I guess seasonal depression could be circumstantial because environmental depression. So depression can come in all different kinds of ways. And, one of the best ways to deal with it when I can't really say for depression, but for my anxiety, when my anxiety was really, really bad, like when we were in the fifth wheel, and I literally couldn't function in there. I was so claustrophobic, so, I guess, depressed and really anxious. I couldn't sleep, and I would just get out my Bible, my physical Bible, not my phone. Like, I needed a physical Bible, and I held it, and I read it, and I would just read chapter after chapter after chapter.
Right.
And it really did actually calm me down.
Yeah, you're grounding yourself in the Word.
And then the Psalms. The Psalms are so helpful. Like right now, I'm going through Psalms. I don't find them very interesting, but whenever I'm going through something really difficult, the Psalms are so comforting. When I'm in like a hard season of life. But what I wanted to share was, whenever I was doing one of my Bible studies, Psalm 139. It was like the last thing I kind of wanted to say.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there was something else that you wanted to talk about as far as biblical.
Yeah, there's a few passages that I'd just like to kind of read that I think
Same.
apply.
Yeah.
And so the first one is going to be in Romans 12. And this is going to be the
I have Romans 12 pulled up. That's funny.
Okay. Yeah, this is going to be kind of the longest one. I'm going to read 9 to 21. It says, "Let love be without hypocrisy. Abhor what is evil. Cling to what is good. Be devoted to one another in brotherly love. Give preference to one another in honor, not lagging behind in diligence, fervent in spirit, serving the Lord, rejoicing in hope, persevering in tribulation, devoted to prayer, contributing to the needs of the saints, practicing hospitality. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice, and weep with those who weep. Be of the same mind toward one another. Do not be haughty in mind, but associate with the lowly. Do not be wise in your own estimation. Never pay back evil for evil to anyone. Respect what is right in the sight of all men. If possible, so far as it depends on you, be at peace with all men. Never take your own revenge, beloved, but leave room for the wrath of God. For it is written, 'Vengeance is mine, I will repay,' says the Lord. But if your enemy is hungry, feed him, and if he is thirsty, give him a drink. For in so doing, you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good." And so in that section, there's a lot of things that we see kind of related to depression. Verse 12 tells us to rejoice in hope, to persevere in tribulation, and be devoted to prayer, right? So again, that's going into our communication with the Father. If we're staying in constant communication with him, a lot of the challenges that we face, the things that are bringing us down, become easier. And then being hospitable, like helping other Christians, but also the people that are the ones saying bad things about you. It tells us to, interact with them in very kind ways, very meek and humble ways, and not to worry about getting what's right for us, but trusting that God in his perfect will is going to bring about everything that is just, right? And we know that no matter what happens here, eventually his justice will reign. But then, to not be focused on getting back at others. And there's a lot of like psychological truth there. Being focused on things that are lovely, right? And that are good, instead of things which are evil. That will help your mental health. Was there anything you had on Romans 12? Were you in the same passage as me?
Well, I was listening to a Christian counselor talk about how she prays. I can't remember the verses, but I thought she said she prays with her clients Romans 12, 1 through 2. And that's what I thought she said. It could have been in different verses. So I pulled it up, but I couldn't really... it's good. It says, "Therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. Maybe it has something to do with the renewing of the mind or something.
Absolutely. And then knowing that our bodies are a living and holy sacrifice to God, right? You know, being focused on that has a lot of spiritual truth. So the next one I'm going to read from is Isaiah 40, and we're going to read verses 28 through 31. And it says, "Do you not know? Have you not heard? The everlasting God, the Lord, the creator of the ends of the earth, does not become weary or tired. His understanding is inscrutable. He gives strength to the weary, and to him who lacks might, he increases power. Though youths grow weary and tired, and vigorous young men stumble badly, yet those who wait for the Lord will gain new strength. They will mount up with wings like eagles. They will run and not get tired. They will walk and not become weary." So we see through Isaiah that the Lord is the source of his people's strength. It's not in ourselves that we overcome depression, as you know firsthand.
Yeah.
But it says when we're weary, he is our strength, and he can renew us and reinvigorate us. And then the last one I have is Psalms. So Psalm 42, it says, "As the deer pants for the water brooks, so my soul pants for you, O God. My soul thirsts for God, for the living God. When shall I come and appear before God? My tears have been my food day and night, while they say to me all day long, 'Where is your God?' These things I remember, and I pour out my soul within me. For I used to go along with the throng and lead them in procession to the house of God, with the voice of joy and thanksgiving, a multitude keeping festival. Why are you in despair, O my soul? And why have you become disturbed within me? Hope in God, for I shall again praise him for the help of his presence. O my God, my soul is in despair within me. Therefore I remember you from the land of Jordan and the peaks of Hermon, from Mount Mizar. Deep calls to deep at the sound of your waterfalls. All your breakers and your waves have rolled over me. The Lord will command his loving kindness in the daytime, and his song will be with me in the night, a prayer to the God of my life. I will say to God, my rock, why have you forgotten me? Why do I go mourning because of the oppression of the enemy? As a shattering of my bones, my adversaries revile me, while they say to me all day long, where is your God? Why are you in despair, O my soul? And why have you become disturbed within me? Hope in God, for I shall yet praise him, the help of my countenance and my God.
So I wanted to read Psalm 139. And Zinnia is awake, so that's why there's baby noises. So whenever like I said, I've been going through the Psalms, but whenever I heard this psalm, it stopped me in my tracks, and I was like, wow, God knows me is kind of what I was thinking about. Because, what if you had a big burden on your life, and you sacrificed for your entire life, and never got to be self-serving, you never got to do any of the things that you wanted to do. And there's so much pressure in this world to have all the things and to do all the things, and whenever you are someone who can't have all the things and do all the things, that can also cause depression. And I think that's a lot of us, especially in an age with social media, and you have all the comparisons of my life against somebody else's life. It doesn't look as good. And I think we can get stuck in that mindset of like, I've wasted my life, or my life has just been this one thing, and it's like, it's just been a waste, and now I'm too old, or I'm too tired, or I'm too sick to go back and relive my, glory days, or whatever it is. But if we can focus that and remember that this is not like the only life like this, like, I mean, this is the only life that we have, like, that's like this, but that the real life is after this life.
Yeah. This is not our home.
It's being eternally minded. And I talk about it all the time. If you can shift your focus onto things that are eternal,
right,
then you can walk out, what God has for you, and walk in the Holy Spirit a lot easier, because you're not so focused on the worldly distractions,
right,
because you realize they're all temporary.
Yeah. Well, I specifically remember one thing you said is that, if this world is your only home, if that's what you believe, is this world is your true home, and you live one of those lives where you don't have everything, and where you are one of the have-nots, what hope can you possibly have? What if you're one of those people that suffers, and this world is it? There's no reason to not be depressed.
Right. Where is your hope?
Mm-hmm.
Where is your hope? Like, I think we're just so distracted.
Yeah.
We are so distracted that we get, like, we forget that one day we're not gonna, be here. It always takes like a huge life, something really impactful to get us, like, get us to focus on what is really happening in this world and what's really important. To get us to focus on, like, okay, well, what actually happens after I die?
Yeah.
And where am I going? And how do I get there? And what is the truth? And once you start asking those questions, once you start seeking and start searching, that is when God he is so near to you in those times. And if you actually are searching for truth and being open to it, at least for me, that's how God revealed himself to me. So anyways, having said all that, when I was reading through the Psalms, and like I said, I wasn't getting much out of them, Psalm 139 hit me. And so I wanted to read it. It says, "O Lord, you have examined my heart and know everything about me. You know when I sit down or stand up. You know my thoughts even when I'm far away. You see me when I travel and when I rest at home. You know everything I do. You know what I am going to say even before I say it, Lord. You go before me and follow me. You place your hand of blessing on my head. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too great for me to understand. I can never escape from your spirit. I can never get away from your presence. If I go up to heaven, you are there. If I go down to the grave, you are there. If I ride the wings of the morning, if I dwell by the farthest oceans, even there your hand will guide me, and your strength will support me. I could ask the darkness to hide me, and the light around me to become night, but even in darkness I cannot hide from you. To you the night shines as bright as day. Darkness and light are the same to you. You made all the delicate inner parts of my body and knit me together in my mother's womb. Thank you for making me so wonderfully complex. Your workmanship is marvelous. How well I know it. You watched me as I was being formed in utter seclusion. As I was woven together in the dark of the womb, you saw me before I was born. Every day of my life was recorded in your book. Every moment was laid out before a single day had passed. How precious are your thoughts about me, O God. They cannot be numbered. I can't even count them. They outnumber the grains of sand. And when I wake up, you are still with me. O God, if only you would destroy the wicked. Get out of my life, you murderers. They blaspheme you. Your enemies misuse your name. O Lord, shouldn't I hate those who hate you? Shouldn't I despise those who oppose you? Yes, I hate them with total hatred, for your enemies are my enemies. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. Point out anything in me that offends you, and lead me along the path of everlasting life. And that just made me think about how close God is and how much he knows and how if you can trust him, if you can learn to trust him and learn about him and be near to him, you don't have anything to worry about because he literally holds you in his hands.
Yeah, and so I think we would just say that, we believe there's both a spiritual and physical aspect to depression, and that if you're struggling, the first thing is to admit that you're struggling, and then secondly is to try and move towards healing, right? And utilize the resources that are available, and also like a huge resource that we touched on slightly is prayer, right?
Yeah.
Like pray, and
if I always feel so much better when I know somebody's praying for me.
Yep. And then know that there's hope in Jesus, right? There's hope in him, and he will overcome, and we will overcome with him.
Well, thank you guys for being here today, and I just hope and pray that you can use this if you're struggling to find some sort of resolution, or at least be inspired to dive into your word, read your word, and know that God is always with you no matter what. Absolutely. And we will talk to you guys later.
Keep running the race.
Bye.
Bye.